So today I want to talk to you a little bit about the moving process with mold and CIRS. When you have mold illness, and I'll be speaking mostly about mold illness because 80% of people with one of the gene combinations have mold sensitivities. I will be talking a little bit about how to handle it, a VOC situation. We'll be talking about moving. We'll be talking about remediation and like how do you transition from that. So what I'm officially calling this, and because there's so much in here, it's hard for me to remember. So we're going to be talking about remediating and finding appropriate help. And we're also going to be talking about moving into clean housing, what that moving process looks like. And then also, how do we do it when we have VOCs present? How do we do it without VOCs present? How do we do it after remediation? How do we do it after moving? What does that entire process look like? What am I getting into? And what do I need to be prepared for? What are things that I can pay people for? What are things I cannot pay people for? What are some things also mistakes that I could make in order to not cross-contaminate my house and still remain sick? So we'll be talking about that. I don't think we'll have a whole bunch of time to go into what can be cleaned and what cannot be cleaned. So that will be a great other video. So this video is actually the second video of a series. The first video was on finding clean housing. That was for how to shop for clean housing, like when you're trying to buy new housing. I did touch base a little bit on remediation, and I gave you some great resources on who could guide you on remediation, and some warnings about that kind of stuff. So I'll be talking today. I'm also talking to some of my providers that I'm training. So this video is for them, but I'm expanding the availability of the video to those who are also going through it for support. So of course, see a CEP provider for ultimate ultimate support. And then also I'll be alluding to a couple things that will only be available to CEP providers and their clients and patients. So just know that right off the top of the head. Okay, so let me go back over to where I am, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of get started a little bit. Now, I apologize. I'm going to be reading off some of my notes. I make notes so that I am prepared and organized, and I make sense and all that kind of stuff. So if it looks like I'm reading a little bit, it's because I'm glancing at some notes. And I'm going to share some of those notes with you. So we're actually going to go over them together because if you're like me, you're a visual learner. And so having that in writing as well as hearing it can be really helpful in learning some of this stuff. So I'm going to make sure that you are being brought with me on some of those notes, and so that you have that extra way of learning. So you absolutely can take screenshots of this. If you are a client, you can ask for the handout itself. And we'll just go ahead and jump in and get started. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share right from here. As you can see, we are on Facebook Live right now. Let's see. Okay, here, that's not it. Let's go over, where are my notes? Please tell me I didn't get rid of it. Okay. Oh, okay. So I'm actually going to stop share because I need to look it up. I apologize for the delay. Let me go back over to there and go over there real quick. Okay, here we go. Now we can share. Sorry about that. It took me just a minute. I must have accidentally closed that window. Okay. So first, let's talk about remediating and finding appropriate help. Whether you're a new build, whether you're going into a perfect mold-free environment because you found a wonderful house. I call it a unicorn house, because they're so hard to find, or you've remediated. So whether that is, like you've built a house so it could be clean, you've bought one, or whether you just remediated your old one. So what not to do, there's a big list of what not to do on this thing. I have covered that on our patient action plan. Providers, you have a copy of that. Clients have a copy of that. That is actually 3 handouts that are broken out into baby steps for like the beginning, the middle, and the end of the journey on how to basically make the decision of how to move forward, whether you make the decision, whether you're remediating, whether you're not fixing the environment, whether you're building, whether you're moving, and just kind of helps you walk through that process of things that you could do now, things that you can do next, and things that you want to do for your ultimate goal, and what not to do also. Like, don't think that your mold guy is able to do that, and there's a lot more other tips like that. I do recommend a website called survivingremediation.com, and no, there's not a space in there. So let me go ahead and get rid of that space. Survivingremediation.com. That actually is puts you in touch with the authority on the remediation process for those with a CIRS susceptible genetic predisposition. Because the big question is it going to be clean enough And are you going to spend $10,000 or more remediating a place and then it still make you sick? So in order to keep you from spending tens of thousands of dollars without getting where you want to get with that tens of thousands of dollars, Greg Weatherman definitely is who I recommend. He is partnered with Shoemaker for this genetic population, and he is the authority when it comes to the physical environment. So he does consults, and he can basically through video can run your remediation project from anywhere in the world, and that is who I recommend absolutely, especially because finding a Shoemaker certified remediator is incredibly difficult. And then there'll still be a lot that they can't answer for you. So he is absolutely the authority. The other thing that I recommend to providers, I actually am very hesitant to recommend this to patients or clients, because is the Surviving Mold Manual. This manual, which is created for patients, I don't think it's patient friendly. I think it's extremely overwhelming. I think the biggest mistake you can do if you do decide to buy this, if you do decide to have this in your library, I do not recommend reading it from cover to cover. It's not meant to be used that way. If you do that, it will send you, basically, you will run for your life. It will freak you out. So even me who does this for a living, and I'm, gung-ho and obsessed and like crazy, like, passionate about this, it sent me into the woods hiking for 2 weeks to process all the information because it really freaked me out. So I'm just gonna be 100% honest there. So I don't recommend doing that. So for my providers who are watching this, what I recommend is having that and then photocopying certain pages of it for reference, or creating your own handouts using it. I also recommend having some mentors and advisors to help you with this in addition to the manual, because like when I went through the process, the manual had the nth degree. It doesn't take into account a good, better, best. It doesn't take in well, maybe. It doesn't take into the individual case. It says this is the nth degree, absolute perfection, which sometimes is not attainable for people. So what I did is I got some of my mentors who worked with some of the writers of the books, some of the friends of the writers of the books, some nurses who worked under Shoemaker, and I got their feedback of people who had gone through it before and went over those manual handouts, so to speak, with them and said, okay, how much of this, how realistic is this? How, what else can you tell me? And they gave me some great feedback about what they thought was necessary, what they didn't think was necessary, what even Shoemaker says that might contradict the manual. But of course the manual is written at the nth degree because they're trying to help people. So it's better for someone who's writing a manual like this to write it for the nth degree, for the perfect, because then they know that their advice is good. So like, think about it this way. You've got from 0% to 100%. Some people might be able to do 80 or 90% and still recover, while others have to do 100%. So they're writing it for that 100% because that 100% will be good enough for everybody. So that kind of gives you a point of reference. But there is a little bit of like wiggle room, and there's some opinions. Some of it's not fact, it's opinion. And so having someone to guide you through that, such as a CEP professional or somebody who's been through it, or knows a lot about it, or like even a Greg Weatherman, are great people to advise you on this kind of thing. So using the manual in conjunction with people with experience is definitely something that I recommend. Okay, so let's go back to that handout. So the Surviving Mold Manual, again, very overwhelming, but I do recommend providers have it. I don't recommend reading it cover to cover. If you do decide to get it, it is created for patients, and while it is very simple to read, it is a reference manual. It is not a DIY journal. In fact, they say that in there. It is not a DIY manual. This is not an excuse not to get resources, people who know what they're doing to do it. You cannot remediate your house by yourself. You cannot do a lot of things by yourself through this, and we'll talk about some of those. So there's also, today we're going to talk about moving into clean housing after remediation or moving. And so first thing, after remediation, everything in your house needs to be removed from the house. Now, there are ways to do this room by room instead of all at one time. There is actually tips for that in the manual of guides on how to do that. And basically where, just to kind of give you the short version, they talk about like closing off the room, making it airtight, and how to like go through that process systematically of room by room. So if you want to do that, definitely refer to the manual and the help from someone like Greg Weatherman of how to do that properly and also not create more problems. So that's something I definitely advise. I apologize, I am low on battery, so I'm going to plug in real quick. Let's do that. Okay, one more plug. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so definitely recommend doing that. So that's going to be an issue right there. So there's also two different situations when you have clean housing. So when you remediate, you're going to, ideally, it's kind of easier to make a moving day where you take everything out of the house, clean it, and bring it back in. Before you do that, you might divide it into piles of how you're going to clean it, of how you're going to address it, so that you know what goes where. So you want to organize it before you take everything out. So I would make a weekend of it, one weekend where I would organize everything, another weekend where I would move everything out and then back in and clean and move it back in. And maybe a 4-day weekend, and definitely enlist help. So right now I'm going to talk about what to do when you have a new build, which is going to have a lot of VOCs. So a lot of us are multi-susceptible, meaning we are sensitive to mold and to chemicals. We are sensitive to VOCs, and they can cause inflammation in us, headaches, fibromyalgia, central nervous system issues, autoimmune even, and the list goes on and on. So you'll know if you have this, if you have like mast cell or multiple chemical sensitivities, perfumes make you sick, essential oils make you sick, anything like that, you definitely want to reduce VOCs. However, sometimes we're in a situation where a new build is really all that's available to us, and that's as good as we can get. So that is something to think of. So I've got some practical things to reduce VOCs. There's definitely other things you can do that are on the patient action plan, things like opening windows, HEPA filters, certain HEPA filters, things like that. There's some other tips out there as well. So, but before you move into a VOC household, what you're going to do is this. You're going to go bake the house. So basically, I want to tell you a little bit what bake the house means. So you're going to go to that home, and you're going to turn the heat up all the way. And you're going to let it bake overnight for a couple hours. So basically, just do it overnight. And that's going to heat up the house really hot, really high, really warm, uncomfortably so. And it's going to help the walls and the building materials release their toxins. And so they're going to release those toxins, and you're never going to have a VOC-free house. It takes 2 years for a house to release enough VOCs to be considered low VOC. So it's not going to create a perfect environment. It's just going to aid and make it a little bit better. So just know that, but this is some way you can make a dent. So you are going to bake the house at a very high heat, and then you're going to come back to the house and you're going to wipe the house. Now this, I got to be honest, wiping the house is one of the most horrible experiences. It is mentally, physically tedious. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a long pole, and at the end of that pole, you're going to have like one of those squeegee things. You're going to cover that with a microfiber cloth, but you're going to want to buy about 20 microfiber cloths. And you're going to wet this microfiber cloth in an anti-VOC option. We used Thieves, which is recommended, especially for those who are chemically sensitive. You don't want to buy a chemical cleaner. And you're going to do one pass on the wall. Now you're going to have to do the walls, the floors, the ceilings, inside the cabinets, underneath cabinets, on top of cabinets, all in every little crevice of the house, anywhere where there's a building material, basically. And so you want to do this while it's empty. And again, this only applies to those dealing with VOCs. And after one pass, you need to then take that cloth, throw it in a bucket, grab another cloth, put it on there, and do another pass. That's why you want so many microfiber sleeves for this little, kind of squeegee type pole-driven device. And once you've used them all, then you're going to have to clean those and then start over again. So as you can imagine, this is not a fun process. It is not fun at all. So if you can find someone that will do that for you into the way that you need it done, then I don't care what they charge. So I found someone who would do it for a couple $1,000s, and we chose not to spend it. I regret that. I'm going to be 100% honest. So I highly recommend paying it. Do whatever you got to do, because it was horrible. So just kind of like, personal opinion, pay them. It's worth every single penny, no matter how much, because it is a tedious, draining. And then to add that to all the other moving stuff that you have to do, it can be a lot. So definitely that's one of those things that I would pay for, but of course you can do it yourself if you're willing to go out and buy all that equipment and then go through the tedious process. And if you have a storage unit or something like that, then this is something that can be done one weekend, while the other sections, like you can organize one weekend, you can clean one weekend, and then you can, organize one weekend, remove all the furniture, put it in a storage unit, then come back and clean the house the way it needs to be cleaned, and then another weekend come back and clean all the other items and move them in what can be. So again, pay is recommended. The second thing is that you don't move anything inside the house until it's clean. So this needs to be really is best done when it's empty. You absolutely can do things room by room if that makes it easier for you. Whatever you want to do that. If your house does get cross-contaminated, it can be cleaned from cross-contamination as long as there's no absolute water damage. But if you can avoid that, you want to, because there's no way you can 100% avoid it, because you're going into a moldy environment, touching moldy things and then coming back in and placing it there. You are carrying the mycotoxins, but you're going to do the very best that you can. There has to be a certain number of degrees of separation. So after the house is cleaned, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of put this in a little thing. Let's do a little outline. Let's do this. So the first step is to empty the house. The second step is to clean the house. The third step is to organize belongings. And the fourth one is to move stuff back in. So that's like the basic outline. So let's talk about organizing the belongings. Now, of course, this can be done before I move them out of the house, but just for the sake of having a plan, we want to separate them into piles. And I'm going to number these for you. So the first one I want is things that I'm able to clean myself, things that I can wipe down or dip or throw in the washing machine, or something that I can do and I don't have to take to a professional, I don't have to throw it away. So what can and cannot be cleaned, again, we will go over that in a separate webinar. The second pile that I want are things that are able to be cleaned, but they have to be done by professionals. For example, couches that are upholstery cannot be cleaned, but leather couches can. So if they have a porous area, like say underneath, and they're not sealed by that leather or pleather, then they cannot be cleaned. So that's something that you might be able to get cleaned professionally. Rugs, you might find somebody who can clean them professionally. Something that can be dry cleaned can be cleaned professionally. So these are items that we can't throw it in a washer. I can't send it through. I can't just wipe it down. So we definitely can bring those to somebody, and hopefully somebody can do that. So that's my second pile I want. Then I want a third pile of everything I want to throw away or give away. So I can donate these items. They won't make other people sick. Or I could throw them away if I don't think anyone wants them. I recommend giving away. Not only are you doing a good deed, but you also can get a tax deduction that will really help you at the end of the year, because this whole entire process is expensive, and I'm not going to lie. Okay, and then we have our fourth pile. This fourth pile right here are things I'm not ready to throw away. So let's be 100% honest and real quick. When you have to get rid of every book, every porous piece of artwork, every paper, everything that belongs to you that you can't throw in, every shoe. And I'll be honest, if you can't throw your shoe in the washer, it pretty much can't be cleaned. Now, you can ask your professional if they can clean. I was able to clean a couple sandals, but like my hiking boots were not able to be cleaned. So some things were able to be cleaned and some were not. Most of my boots not able to be cleaned. So when you have to throw away everything, there becomes this natural human thing to be attached and have trouble letting go of some things. So number one, give yourself permission for this to be, to say, you know what, this sucks. Or permission to be like, you know what, I don't want to. You're allowed to not want to. We still encourage you to do what's right for yourself. For example, all of my books were the hardest for me. So all I could think was that I needed them for work, and that I needed them to help people, and that I didn't want to get sick from them, and it was too expensive to replace all of them right now, but I used them every day. Or at least I thought I did. And so what I did instead was I put them in airtight containers. So putting them in airtight containers, you're going to take that one, and there were things that I was not ready to throw away. I wasn't ready to take the dry cleaners. So we separated those into a pile of things that I knew I needed to throw away, but just wasn't emotionally ready. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to hand the things that are able to be cleaned to the professionals. Go ahead and take that stuff to the dry cleaners, take that stuff to, you know, the cleaner who's going to do your couch, the upholstery cleaner, take everything. All that stuff, go ahead and do that first. Get rid of that, get it out of there so there's just less in front of your face, so less overwhelming. Then the things that you can clean need to be cleaned with Thieves Cleaner. So that doesn't include things that go in the washing. So Thieves, the reason we use the Young Living Thieves Cleaner, you have the all-purpose cleaner and you have the essential oil. So the all-purpose cleaner is what I use for most things, and I could either spray on that or I could create a sink or a bucket and I could dip things in it. So one of the reasons we use that is because it is non-toxic, it's antifungal, and it's also anti-mycotoxin. Remember, it's not the mold that makes you sick, it's the mycotoxins released by the mold. So definitely that Thieves Cleaner is also referred to in some circles as detox oil. So that is how we choose to clean in my office. There are chemical ones that are recommended by some people, but I don't recommend them personally because they are toxic to anyone. Even if you can get rid of chemicals, doesn't mean that your liver can't get jammed up by them. Doesn't mean that your body will get rid of all of them just because you're capable. So whether or not you can get rid of them, they're still burdening your body. So we're going to either dip things, and there was things that I just dipped in the water and then set out to dry, and there was other things that I had wiped down. So you just do whichever one is best for you. All clothes, which is right here, can be cleaned with borax added to the laundry. So you want about a cup of borax added to each load. Wash whatever you can on the hottest you can. Other people have put in things like vinegar in it. I don't recommend vinegar just because it is in the fungus family and it can trigger some people, but borax should be able to get things nice and clean for you. Dishes can go through the dishwasher. A dry cleaner can clean some things, and some things can be cleaned by a recommended environmental specialist, like that leather couch or something like that. Mattresses will not be able to be cleaned. Anything porous will not be able to be cleaned. Well, like I said, we'll go more into that later. If you have things in cardboard boxes, these cardboard boxes will be cross-contaminated. So they should stay outside and emptied outside and then cleaned and then brought into the house. So if you bring them inside, yes, you can re-clean the house. You don't have to go through that tedious process of every wall, nook, cranny, molding, and closet all. But you do need to thoroughly clean any area. Like, for example, I put if you put some cardboard boxes on your kitchen tile floor, you need to thoroughly clean that tile floor afterwards because those boxes will be leaving mycotoxins in your house, and those boxes could also make you sick. So definitely get rid of them as possible. But the best, of course, is to let them never enter the house. So just know that you can clean cross-contamination. You want to keep them away from carpet because it can be harder to clean. So just know that. Think of it as porous and there's layers to it that you can't get into. I can't get to so if you have the carpet and then underneath that we have a mat, I can't get to the mat. So definitely want as least on the carpet as possible if there's a carpet. Carpet's not recommended, but it happens. So then we're going to take the things to the Goodwill or the dump that are in that pile. We're going to go ahead and get rid of them. Get rid of them as soon as possible. And then the ones we're not ready to get rid of, we're going to pack in airtight plastic bins, and we're going to put them in a storage unit and reassess. If you are like me and you have this fantasy that you're going to go visit your books, then don't do that in the house. Don't do that in the garage. Take them outside the house, under a tree, somewhere like that, read them, and then go ahead and put them back in the bin. I'll be honest, I had mine in the bin for about 3 months into my new house, took them out once as a resource, and I got headaches and inflammation from them. So that's kind of what I expect for other people to have similar experiences. They think they want them, and then one day they realize how making them, and the books are no longer that attractive. So now I'm ready to invest in new clean copies of that, or digital copies, of course, or something you never have to throw away. Whereas if I buy a paper copy and my house gets, water damage in it, I have to throw away the book again. However, I prefer books over digital copies. That's just my preference. So each, just make an informed decision about what you're willing to go through. Okay. So that's kind of like the basics of how to do that. Now, if you don't have the VOCs, it's the exact same process. If you're remediating and you've taken everything out and then cleaned, that's great. If you bought a house that did not have VOC, it's more than 2 years old and it had no water damage, then what you're going to do is you're going to skip that baking and wiping process. That's just something that we can do instead. And so what I recommend afterwards, see, I'm going to go ahead and type this in, after the move, or after I should say the move and prep. What I want you to do is you want to make sure you have HEPA filters, you want to have dehumidifiers, and you want to test the house periodically. And they're also, the manual has a checklist to maintain your clean house. Now, also, I want to talk a little bit, there is, some people can do this and some people will not be able to do this. So I actually found a house that was clean and it had a basement. And one of the reasons that they kept a basement is because the dehumidifier, they had ran a hose from the dehumidifier to drain outside of the basement so that you didn't have to depend on a human remembering to empty the tray every day. So, and you also didn't have standing water in the house, you know, contributing towards possible water damage or mold or other, you know, fungi or whatever. And so if you're able to do that, if you're able to figure out how to get that done, then that's something that I definitely recommend, especially if you have a basement. Some people will be very mold, but just remember that when you clean the mold, you kill the mold. And when you kill the mold, you release the toxins, which could make somebody with these gene combinations sick. Definitely, if you're going to clean the mold, have a professional do it. If you do get any kind of anything like that, prep your house for, you know, preventing water damage. Make sure you're using anti-mold stuff. Make sure you're using low toxin stuff. And make sure you're getting advice from someone like Greg Weatherman or the manual on how to prepare your home to prevent it from becoming more, preventing it from having water damage should you have a water intrusion. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful today, and I will see you next time. Okay, thanks so much. And again, I'm Rebecca from mycrazyjourney.com.